Guten Abend. Wir machen nicht akademischen Viertel, wir machen akademisches 5. 18:05 beginnen wir. Good evening, dear students, colleagues and guests. Many of you are probably familiar with Susan Sontag's seminal book on photography. Does it say anything? Does it ring a bell? 1977, a work that has shaped how generations think about the power of images and the realities they construct. For this short greeting, I could not help but take the book in my hands again, and its insights feel more relevant than ever. Photography, as Sontag observed, never simply documents the world. It helps shape the realities we come to accept. A city portrait like Antwerpen, The Road Travelled 1993 to 23, is therefore more than an archive. It is a thoughtful and valuable construction, a curated lens through which we understand a decisive decade of transformation. Curated lens, not in its word meaning, of course. Precisely because such exhibitions are so well crafted and insightful, they also invite us, students, architects, decision makers, citizens, to reflect on how images frame urban narratives, distribute visibility, and subtly guide our sense of what a city is or might become. In Sontag's terms, the photographed city can momentarily stand in for the lived city, which is why learning to read these images critically is essential for today's urbanism and architectural culture. In a contemporary world saturated with digital and AI-generated visuals, the challenge is not to mistrust the medium, but to use it more consciously, to reveal complexity rather than reduce it, to show processes as well as results, and to make visible the social, ecological, and material realities that often escape the iconic image. This exhibition offers an exemplary starting point not only for appreciating how Antwerpen was seen, but for reimagining how we might depict, understand, and shape cities through photography today. This is, of course, all my interpretation. This evening, we will also hear about the project documenting Schlieren 2005 to 2020, a planned and long-term visual inquiry into urban change that kind of contrasts or maybe couples with Antwerp's retrospective portrait. Taken together, these approaches remind us that photographing a city is never passive. It is a form of urban practice in itself, one that carries the responsibility to illuminate not just what a city looks like, but how it transforms, for whom and toward what future. Before passing the microphone to Regule Iseli, my sincere thanks go to her and to the authors and participants of our podium with Rachel Bühlmann, Hans Bol, Georges Chalier, Ulrich Görlich, Christian Schwager, and Pieter Uyttenhove. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much, Goya. I will maybe introduce how we will going on, like the choreography of the evening. I will shortly introduce all the guests we have and pointing out some of their main characteristics or things I cannot. I switch on German. Ich werde aus ihrem Lebenslauf ganz wenige Dinge sagen. Es ist unmöglich, alles aufzulisten, was sie geleistet, gemacht, geschrieben, geforscht, ausgestellt haben. Ihr werdet sehen, es ist ein unwahrscheinlich dichtes, sehr weites Erfahrungsfeld, das wir hier auf dem Podium haben. Diese beiden Projekte, Schlieren und Antwerpen, haben uns eigentlich zu dieser Frage verholfen, ja, wie schauen denn eigentlich die Fotografen auf die Stadt? I mean, the main questions of this evening is, how do photographers look at the city? In der Hoffnung, dass wir etwas von ihnen lernen. Wir beginnen mit einem ganz kurzen Einführung in die Antwerpen-Ausstellung. How was it made? Why is it here? What does it mean? Pieter Uyttenhove wird uns das vorstellen. Im zweiten Schritt wird Ulrich Görlich uns Schlieren vorstellen. Was war die Idee? Was ist die Erkenntnis? Was ist das Dokument? Also das kann ich vorne wegnehmen. Wir haben hier zwei unglaublich dicke Werke. Das eine ist der Zeitraffer von Schlieren. Und hier, das schaffe ich, glaube ich, nicht mit einer Hand, das Folio von Antwerpen. Geschätzte 10 Kilo. Wunderschöne Dokumentationen. Und wir werden dann die anderen Fotografen aufs Podium bitten. Ich freue mich, dass Rachel Bühlmann da ist. Eine andere Generation als die restlichen von uns Speakern. Ich freue mich, dass Christian Schwager hier ist und ich freue mich auch, dass Hans Bol hier ist und Georges Charlie. Beginnen wir ganz kurz mit Pieter. Diejenigen, die an der Vernissage dabei waren, kennen ihn bereits. Pieter is a Belgian architect, author, engineer, archaeologist. He is a full professor emeritus in theory and history of urbanism at Ghent University. He was leading the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning and also the chair of the Master of Science in Urbanism and Spatial Planning. He's working in Belgium as well as in Paris. Ulrich Görlich is a German-Swiss photographer and artist. He was a professor and teacher, director and teacher in der Werkstatt für Fotografie in Berlin und Professor und Direktor des Department of Photography an der ZHDK in Zürich. Er hat neben Fotografien auch Installationen gemacht, die schwer zu charakterisieren sind, mindestens was ich gesehen habe in seinem Archiv. Und, aber ich will das nicht zu lang ausführen, weil wir interessieren uns ja insbesondere über die Konzeption und die Durchführung dieses Projektes, die Sicht der Fotografen und auch zu erwähnen, es war ein Konzept oder eine Arbeit, die nicht nur lange dauert, es war auch ein größeres Team, insbesondere Meret Wandeler war da auch mitbeteiligt. Rachel Bühlmann ist Fotografin, sie ist, hat an der Fachhochschule Nordwestschweiz am Institut Medienkunst studiert und ebenso an der Universität der Künste in Berlin mit dem Master of Arts abgeschlossen. Sie ist von ihrer Herkunft her mit der analogen Fotografie aufgewachsen und hat heute natürlich so das Handwerk, das braucht der Technik mischen, je nach Art und Weise des Vorhabens. Und sie hat uns Fotografien geschickt, wir werden sie auch zeigen. Und was mich überrascht hat, dass sie immer kleine Serien geschickt hat. Und vielleicht erzählt sie uns, was es damit auf sich hat. Hans Bol, holländischer Fotograf, schreibt auf seiner Internetseite, that he is interested in violated landscapes, that evokes critical thinking and reflection, that makes one humble and shows traces of human presence. He made longer travels to the United States and to India, and he was looking for these types of landscapes. But in his portfolio, also on his internet site, I discovered many portraits of people. And he says, like in a landscape that draw my interest, I like to see the traces that life leaves in a person. To me, that makes somebody worthwhile to photograph. The question is on Antwerp, photography what is this violated landscape or cityscape or traces of human living? Maybe we will find out later at his speech. And I found out that you were founder of this recto verso publication. You're also publisher of mainly photography collections. We have Georges Charlier. He considers himself just as a photographer in first place, but he makes also, or in recent years, he's focusing on digital reproductions and archiving and high quality printing processes. I found this interesting story that in the 1980, a botanist of the National Botanic Garden, Leo van Hecke, commissioned him to re-photograph the photographic documents of Jean Massat. And Georges Charlier was at that time professional photographer for the Belgian nature and bird reserves and traveled through Flanders to capture 60 landscapes on the sensitive plate. This created a unique comparison material that was used for the publication and traveling exhibition entitled Landscapes in Flanders, Past and Present, from Green Poverty to Grey Abundance. Maybe there are parallels to the work of Antwerp. And at least, but not last, we have Christian Schwager, who himself is also freelance and independent photographer. He works also with us on the Institute Urban Landscape. He's photographing in den Themen Architektur, Stadtlandschaften, Landschaften, Gärten, Ausstellungsdokumentationen, Reportagen. Hat an der Fotografie studiert an der Hochschule für Gestaltung und Kunst, die heutige ZHDK. Und vielleicht kennen Sie seine Monographien My Lovely Bosnia, die falschen Chalets, Panzerland und das jüngste Kollektion Forêt, Sondermüll, Deponie, Bonfol. Ich habe sie im Kunstmuseum Solothurn gesehen. Well, then we start with Antwerp.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation, and also to have the exhibition here that we made about Antwerp. Thank you very much. I will tell you something about the exhibition and also about the photos and about the portfolio that we made. I have two things to think about. Well, this is the map of Antwerp, and we go, first of all, back to 1993, when Antwerp was the cultural capital of Europe. There was an architecture program. I was a coordinator, and we decided to work on the 19th century belt, which is this area here, between the orange lines over here, and a little bit of an extension over here. This is what we call the 19th century belt. This is the old Spanish, originally Spanish center of Antwerp. Most of the cultural capital happened here. This is the old, beautiful center of Antwerp with the Rubens Museum and all these, the Plantin Museum and others. And the festival of Antwerp 93 was happening here most of the time. While this was the feast, and this was a kind of a forgotten belt around the feast. But most of the problems of Antwerp were actually situated in this area. You had the old harbor over here from the 19th century and earlier, from the 17th, starting in the 17th century, which was more or less abandoned because the harbor developed to the north of Antwerp. These areas were working class areas from people who were working in the harbor, but there were lots of problems economically and socially, and also some abandoned houses over here. But then you also had some beautiful areas from the 19th century, very bourgeois areas over here, which were in 1993 also abandoned, and with a new population actually inhabiting these areas. You had the old petroleum harbor over here, which was also abandoned. So we wanted to have an image of this area because there was actually relatively very few photography about the areas. And so people of Antwerp didn't speak about these areas, and we wanted to get this discussion start. This is just to show, here is the same Antwerp over here. This is a new harbor, immense. So it started with the little harbor here and the harbor in front of the city at the riverside. Just to show the dimension of the harbor in comparison to the city. The 19th century belt is what you actually call originally between the urban belt of the 19th century, this fortification over here, including the old harbor and including faubourg, suburbs that were like little villages around the city. It included a huge part that was developed in the 19th century. Okay, we go back here. I explained what was happening here. So to get an image of this area, we invited two photographers, Georges Charlier and Hans Bol, to produce this image. And instead of showing them, or instead of pointing out what to photograph, we gave them all the freedom to get an image of the area, but not by looking at objects, not by looking at architecture, or looking at sculptures, or looking at big museums or so, but looking at landscapes, urban landscapes. That was, I think, the only commission or assignment that we gave to the photographers. And so they came up with beautiful pictures from the Scheldt, which is the river of Antwerp, of course. And then this kind of urban landscapes, very daily, everyday living neighborhoods, and Antwerp is full of this kind of streets, where this is rather in the south, actually, with Antwerp. A lot of areas that were a little bit derelict and abandoned housing and old cafes, and also areas in the north, close to the harbor, and areas like this one, which is an old rail yard that was abandoned and waiting for a kind of a new function or something new that happens there. That was a beautiful warehouse of the 19th century, demolished to build something ugly at the site. That was in 1993. You had rail yards, because in harbors, of course, you have lots of infrastructure. Infrastructure is really the big urban motor engine that makes the city. And in Antwerp, you had this kind of railways running around the city and closing in old areas like this one near the railway station. And then you have more modern viaducts and highways running in the north, close to the harbor, for all kinds of transport. Now, for the 19th century belt, in 1993, there was starting a kind of an analysis of, yeah, there is a problem here, and a lot of people in architectural schools actually started to analyze these areas. But there was no idea of do we want to change this, and how do we want to change this? And so with the pictures of Hans and George, we made this exhibition in an old warehouse in the old harbor, the Felix warehouse. It was a beautiful exhibition made by two architects, like a walk in a huge warehouse, completely empty, with here and there some islands of light with the pictures of Hans and George. And this was the warehouse actually that you can see here. And these are pictures of Hans. This is where it happened in 1993. So then 30 years after, and Hans and George, we met regularly, but we never met in Antwerp. And so in 2018, we met in Antwerp because we had kind of a feeling that the pictures that they made in 1993, they were exhibited. They were actually never published. There was no book or anything that was made in 1993. And we gave all the pictures to the Photo Museum in Antwerp, and they stayed in their box for 30 years. So we thought maybe we should do something with these pictures because they are so valuable. And also growing older, 30 years older, we thought that the city changed a lot, and we felt like a kind of a parallel between the changing city and our proper changement of age. And we decided to start a rephotography project. So this is just one picture of Hans and George taking the pictures. What I want to, or what I would like you to understand also is that this kind of photography is a very almost physical investment in exploring the city, finding the places where the older pictures were taken, walking around, and well, Hans will explain this later. It is a kind of photography which is, it's not like looking on your tablet to TikTok or other pictures, but it's something almost a kind of a physical production of images. And I think you can like feeling this in the pictures that you see in the exhibition, that there is that kind of energy involved in making that production. So what was made is in 1993, we made 165, or Hans and George made 165 new images. And then in the second campaign in 2023, a part of this 165 were rephotographed, 54. But we also decided to take new pictures, because we saw that the city was changing and that it would continue to change. And so we wanted to look ahead of us to what was going to happen without really looking for places where it would happen, but just like an intuition, here it will happen probably. And so 103 new pictures were made in 2023. That's together 157 and 165 images. These 322 images, these were digital, these were on negatives. Hans will explain this. And they were digitized. So we had 322 images digitized that we gave to the city archives. So, and you can consult them there also. So let's have a look at those images. This is again another exhibition of the second campaign. It's actually the mother exhibition of what you see here in Winterthur. It was 30% bigger. These are this is the exhibition that we made in Antwerp, in the same warehouse as we were 30 years ago. But now the warehouse became the city archives by coincidence. The city was, there was a transformation in the city, and one of the transformations was the city archives that arrived in this old warehouse by coincidence. I want to go through the pictures a little bit, through the box that we made, that Regula was showing, because it was for us very important this time to have something physical that we wanted to produce, and not only something that would stay somewhere in the archives of the museum, of the photo museum, but something that is published and that can go to libraries and other archives. So we made this box. with 3 parts, 1993, 1993, 2023, the rephotography, and then the new images that I was talking about, and a text, and also all the maps. This is what is in the box. So there's a text. There are all the maps of all the locations of all the pictures with the angle of view. And then all the pictures, of course, in 3 parts, 1993, 1993, 23, and 2023. This is what you will find in the box, the map of Antwerp with all the places and the locations of the pictures. So you see that it's all around Antwerp. The places that have changed and that will probably change in the future a lot here in the harbor. And then the ring road, which is now a ring road, it was the fortification wall that will be covered in the future. But also the old pictures of 93 are on this map. Okay, these are the maps. I go not into this. I show you some pictures of 1993. The Watergate in the south of the bourgeois area, as you can call it, with the site where it is exactly located and the angle of view. And then some of the rephotography, as you can see, this is absolutely by coincidence. When Georges was taking this picture in 1993, he could never imagine that this would arrive 30 years later. But this is, in these 30 years, it became an urban policy of new housing and demolition of old warehouses, unfortunately, to be replaced by this kind of architecture. Okay. The railroad around the city, infrastructure, and then old houses that were in 93 already abandoned and condemned. But it creates a kind of atmosphere which is absolutely unimaginable today in the city. It was replaced by new housing that you can see here, shops under the railroad in all these arches here, new trees, and there's also a school in the neighborhood that arrived. This is in the bourgeois Art Nouveau area of Antwerp with an old, how do you call this, a gas station. And then 30 years later, the gas station became a bar and a restaurant. You have trees, and then the public space gets more place for pedestrians. An old rail yard in the north, close to the harbor, with this picture of it, but without any knowledge of any project that would happen there. But actually, we were working as younger architects during the European capital on projects of this rail yard. And then 30 years later, it happened that there is a new park made with a project of Paula Vigano and Secchi in the north of Antwerp. Things that disappear. This is a road in the north to the harbor, disappeared. It was replaced by a kind of a fake dock with water, just for decorative reasons. And George also points out that this kind of ornamentation is then replaced by this kind of fake painted decoration. So little details tell sometimes very much about what is going on. An aerial view from the top of the photo museum in the south to the south, with all social housing over here and apartment buildings, an open area here, which is now completely built with new buildings over here, very far to the south, and a new urban park with a parking lot underneath. And new pictures, the series of new pictures that was made, with one picture here of George of the old slaughterhouse that will be demolished. Well, this will not be demolished, but all the rest around it of the slaughterhouse will be demolished. The quays at the riverside, which were very industrial and part of the harbor, now became promenades and public urban space, but also with the challenge of the sea level rising, because the water is very, how do you say this? Well, the sea level is from the North Sea coming in the country 80 kilometers until Antwerp, and makes the water rise every day 2 times 3 meters. But it will rise much more. So there's a risk of inundation of the city. So they had to heighten the quays, and they made this in this quite elegant way, as you can see here. Okay, just to end, this is what I showed you before. The pictures that we made, and we hope in 2053 that the new photography will be made, maybe a little bit less because some places are impossible to photograph. And also the new images have to be rephotographed, and then a series of other pictures to be added. This will probably not us anymore who will make it, but we hope that other people will do it for us. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can consult the pictures on this Felix Archiv. You can find all the pictures there.
Thank you very much, Peter. Now we're going back to Switzerland, back to Schlieren, showing another way of transforming a city or city in a Zeitraffer. I give you the word.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you, Regula, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to show this project again. And now we'll see if the modern technology is working. Okay. So you see 2005 to 2020, of course, we started a few years earlier to prepare this project and also to raise some money. And of course, we needed to plan it, raising some money, like from the Swiss National Fund. And also after we finished, sort of finished, 2019. Yeah, here we are. And when we finished the photographing, of course, we tried to work with this archive, and we were thinking about a different project, but it didn't turn out, or maybe it turned out as a project, but it's this massive book which we produced. So more or less, you were looking at 20 years of collaboration, which I think to manage this is a quite big effort in itself. So I think that's very successful that we have done this. But of course, since we are not architects and not city planners, we are photographers. We are not city planners, we needed partners. And of course, the natural partner is the city of Schlieren, which in the beginning were very reluctant to support us, because you will see it in the images. When you look at the images from 2005, it looks pretty bleak, and they didn't like this view. But later on, especially in the end, they were quite proud about it. Staatsarchiv des Kanton Zürich, they are having an archive, so all our photographs are archived there, and they are having a project running, and they are archiving our images on microfilm again, like it used to be in all time. So going back from digital to microfilm. I enjoy this. And then last and the most important partner, Metron Raumentwicklung, the company, they had the order to develop a concept for the city of Schlieren, which was at this time quite unusual, that the city was asking such a company to develop a plan for their development. And they've been quite enthusiastic about this project right from the beginning. I remember the one sentence when the one guy was telling us, we make this plan, but we never go there and look what happened. So, and this was one of the way that they are forced to look at it again. And now we see one of their planning work. So that's the plan of the city Schlieren, but here the coloring you see, it's from the planning company, and they divided the city up in specific areas. Like the important ones for this kind of development plan is this Riedbach area and Schlieren West area. This used to be industrial areas, and the industry was gone maybe a couple of decades before, and in between you've got this kind of in-between uses. We'll see some pictures of this later. There are some more industrial areas where there, oh, that's the point. Hard to see this one and this one, but they're not that important. A second very important part, but a smaller one, is here. Here in the middle, the center of the city. And the yellow streets, especially this one, that's the east-west axis, and it was rebuilt in the 70s according to the ideas of the city for cars, for traveling, and they had 4 lanes, and this divided the city in the upper and the lower part. This was a big problem for this city. So, and the last part I like to point out are these ones. These are the living quarters where they expected that there's not happening much in terms of new buildings, but renovation was most likely. Now, we've seen this picture from Antwerpen already, the points where we stood to photograph, and that's the same, hard to tell, I guess, the same situation we just saw. What I always looking for my point. Oh, it's up there. So we have the big street here, the yellow one, and here in the middle where you see this crowd of points, that's the center of the city. And the industrial areas I was pointing out are up there. And then you have this kind of living quarters down there, or here, this point, or this point. So you can see that the points are divided according to what is happening, according to the city plan. And in the first year, 2005, we took a lot of photographs, and we discussed these photographs with Schlieren and the city planning company, and together we were deciding where to put the camera. Because the city plan is pretty rough, so they're not telling you which building is being built later. They're telling you what should happen in this area, and it's up to the investor and to the city to decide which kind of architecture is going to build there. So therefore, it's a very rough plan, and you never know where you are ending up when you're taking photographs at this spot. Now we are coming to a few of these ones. We started 2005 until 2019, photographing every 2 years from one of these red points. That makes 8 photographs from each of these points. And I'm going through the first one without any more comments. So we are at 2019, and if you don't believe it, you can watch this part. This isn't changing. It's still the same. Like, let's see. There we started. Or even one more. No, that's it. There we started. It's still there. Or it was still there. And even this one you can see in the new ones. So that's a good example how much is changing at some of these locations. I show another one. So let's go back. Maybe you remember how the first photograph was looking from this series. Oops, gone too far again. So this was an industrial area, and it couldn't be used for anything because it was contaminated with chemicals. So that's the reason it was staying there for, I don't know, 2 decades, maybe 20 years. And by the way, this was the most active area in terms of green. The variety of the green stuff which is growing there is immense, since nobody was interfering. So the human beings weren't interfering with this kind of growing. But now it's gone, this kind of diversity of nature, there it is. So now you wonder maybe that we need some rules, how to do it. So we set up a set of rules, and I just continue going images. We set up rules. First is easy. We are always standing on public ground. Like here is a street. We never go into a private garden. It's always a public ground we are standing on. We are looking straight forward, eye level, straight forward. That's the easy part. Now the more difficult part, we like to prefer this kind of weather or sky. This kind of typical documentary gray sky. Why is that? It's easy because if you have sunshine, you're having highlights where you might have no Zeichnung. What's Zeichnung of English? No showing maybe, yeah. And you have maybe the blacks where there's no showing. And we want to show everything. So everything what is in the image should be visible. And therefore, we prefer this kind of light. In terms of time of the year, maybe from May to August. December, so May to September. And of course, that's for the photographer a real hustle. Having this kind of light in a period of a couple of months and then photographing 60 or more images on the exact same spot. And that's the next important part. It has to be the same spot. Because if you just move a bit over to one side, your foreground is changing a lot. The background stays the same, but the relationship between foreground and background is changing a lot. So luckily we had Christian, who did most of the photographing, and after a couple of years he knew where to put his camera, I guess. So now here maybe is an interesting point where I can also explain a bit what we think these photographs are about. They're not about architecture. They're not about traffic. You don't see any cars. Maybe far in the background, you don't see any people walking around. We like to show the space of the city. And the space, if you like, is defined from all the objects within the space. And therefore, we always had this kind of view of where you have a building on the right side, you see in the middle the buildings also in the back, and on the left also. You have an idea how this crossing works and how this crossing is changing within time. And one of the aspects, so I'm go back, sorry. And one of the important aspects of change, you can see the horizon is changing, or the horizon is gone. You used to be in Schlieren, it's a lot of open space where you can really look far away, and now the space in the city is closing in, and maybe this gives the idea of a city. Otherwise, you have more the idea you are in a landscape. Here's another good example for this. And by the way, Schlieren was, for the people who don't know, very famous for used car sales. So the whole big part of the city was just shops for used cars. And if you wanted to buy a used car in Zurich, you went to Schlieren. No, that's a drastic change of this area. And even the color. We had, by the way, one of our projects we were thinking about is asking the people who were involved in this kind of building, why is this facade red? Couldn't it be blue? How come it's red? I think that's an interesting question. We never know why certain buildings looking the way they're looking like. Nobody knows it. So this would be a fun project, but we didn't do it. So now the living quarters, that's a nice one. I like this a lot. So watch out. And one of the points in our photography is that you see the big changes, but you should also be able to see the small changes. That's very important for us. That's the reason doing a photograph every 2 years, so you could really look from 2 years ago, how was it looking, what has changed. And that's a great example of what it's changing. And the garbage cans are out. Now there is this bird's house, new. You have this car in the back. The car is the same, it's just the other way parked. Again, now they have a camping car. Now the car changed, but since it's the same size or same type, I think it's the same person. It's again parked there. Again, 2 years later. Again, turned around. That's of course not very serious, but you can look people looking at it very differently. We had an exhibition in the museum in Schlieren with around 160 photographs, nice old building, and we had school classes coming in. It was amazing how the kids were looking at these photographs and how they were talking immediately. Just with us asking them, they were starting to talk about this. And having guided tours with people who are living there was also interesting what kind of history they can talk about. Now, that's an interesting, because there's nothing new happening in terms of new construction, but just have a look at it. Oh, one more, yeah. And that's another aspect. If you're looking at the images from 2005 and the last ones, you see the coloring of the city has changed. It's a different color. It's not the same anymore. And this has, of course, a big impact on how you look at the city, how you feel maybe in your city. 2005, I was saying, when we spent a lot of time there, I could never live in this place. Now I would say, no problem. I would live in this place. Since this has really changed to the better. Okay, now the last one of this kind of photography. That's the center. Very inviting. The only change in the first years is the shopping mall has a new outfit. And then nothing happens. In the back there are some changes, but we don't see it. Now it's getting serious. This kind of tree is a famous sign for Schlieren. They moved it to a different place because they wanted to save it, but unfortunately it died. So it's not around anymore. And now you see the new place. Very modern. And now I could start, I'm looking at these images quite a lot already. Now I could start about city planning, but I won't do it. Because this kind of roof is absolute senseless. If you're standing there at the tram station, the wind is going under, the rain is going under. Of course, greens are only here on the left and in the back there a little bit and there a little bit. And it's also interesting if you're looking at the images from 2005 and the last ones and comparing the amount of green in the images. I would say it's decreasing, it's not increasing. There's less green in the new areas, especially where there are no constructions, there are no big trees anymore. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, one problem with trees is in these modern areas is you have the underground parking garages. And you can't put any big trees there anymore, since the ground is just maybe, whatever, 1 or 2 meters. Now, the question, how do you photograph a city? My answer is, I don't know. You have to make up your own rules, like we did it in the beginning, and you have to stick to your rules. But since we also had the feeling that what we are showing might be not enough, and for this reason, we started photographing details, and they are totally different. They are like this. And the concept there was quite easy. Sunshine, to get away from this depressing feeling, And what is important is in the middle of the image. That's it. And of course, that's quite subjective, more subjective than the other one. And Mary did most of these photographs. She liked wandering around. And here you see from 2005, a few of these examples of this use of the industrial areas, which was quite funny what was happening there. And she was photographing it, and later we discussed what kind of photographs we would like to include in our work. But all over, we have now a total of all the photographs, maybe 1,400. So that's the archive. So these are the old parts which are mostly gone. From all these photographs, they are gone. Even this one, I like all these kinds improvised buildings for selling cars. Of course, industrial storage space. That's another nice one. Now we're getting to a newer part, 2010 to 2015. By the way, we photographed these ones only alle 5 years. So it's a very selective kind of photography, and it's, you could also say it's random, more or less. Whereas we are trying with the first one, with the overviews, to give a concept which you can understand. Here you can't understand why the photographer is doing this and where he's standing it and so forth. And now we're in the new time. It's just amazing living there. Playgrounds are also a great topic. We can go through our archives and put all together the images with playgrounds. And if you look at the new ones, like this one, that's even the maximum. A slide and 2 swings. Amazing. Just amazing. That's also nice. You have to close them in. And there you can see they're coming into this place, new shops, new kind of services, which haven't been there before. And what is nice about these details, like I told you, you can make a series about playgrounds, but you also can make a series about what is happening first floor, like shops, pubs, or whatever. And if you're like a fan of typography, you could go through these photographs and look at the typography of the old and the new shops, how it's changing. Like this one is a very inviting new one. So altogether, we're having this pile of Übersichten, and we're having a huge pile of details. And we are thinking of this as an archive which you can work with. And when I'm saying you, I mean it literally. If you have any interest in this material, just ask us. You can get it for free, of course, and can work with it, because that's material to do any research or any project with it. And we also think that is interesting, and that's what we tried in this book. It has actually 2 parts. And the first one is my favorite one, because that's quite easy. It's just all the overviews. 8 images on a double page, and you can look at these 8 images and see how it changed. And the quality is good enough that you even can look at some details. That's the one part, and the other part, which is really heavy, and trying to make different combinations of photographs. Like there could be a combination of sites where the change is happening fast or maybe slowly. There could be like different objects in a different area. There could be all kinds of combinations of images, and depending on what you like to show, you make a different collection, and you get a different kind of approach to these photographs. And that's what we like, what this book does as an example. And we also would like that people are using it. There's a Heimlichweg we already saw, that people are using it for any kind of research or publication or whatsoever. So that's it. Thank you.
So thank you very much. So we now have like two different approaches. I understood the intuition a little bit, what Peter was telling us about Antwerp. Intuition is something that lies in the air, and it's much more systematically what they did in Schlieren, because it was conceived just to go through a certain decade. And they have like two different perspectives, the objects themselves, or the ground floors, or the urban rooms. And now I think we have 3 more statements of our invited photographers. I'd like to start with you, Rachel. Just maybe concentrating on these questions. How do you look on cities? Or what are you interested in when photographing cities or cityscapes? And I also give you your pictures, and they're just changing automatically, if that's okay.
Seconds each.
No, it was 16 seconds.
16 seconds each, okay.
But she has
Okay,
not
thank you.
100.
Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me and making me think about what the heck I am doing with photography, or with my photography here concerning cities or cityscapes, because I'm not so sure yet what it is. And I think it's a much more personal approach, actually. So I work alone, and my review will be more personal, I have to say. I think I need photography and the cityscape as a subject or an object for my personal orientation. It's a way of finding my way through towns or life or whatever. And actually, it started because when I came back from Berlin, after living in 7 years in Berlin, I had a studio there. I worked in a studio environment, and mostly with still lifes. And when I came back to Switzerland, I didn't have this anymore. So I started to go outside, because I still had the urge of taking pictures, and use those, in this case, gas stations, as a kind of still life. I mean, my approach was more as a still lifey one than a städteplanerische one. And the same with this. This is the beginning of the series, which was called, or is called, Atomic Beach. I was so amazed when I came back from Berlin how close you can get to Atomkraftwerk, to a nuclear power plant. So I thought, I can't erase it. I have to indulge it somehow. I have to make it to a theme. And now I'm living next to it. So I'm super close, and can keep on working on this series. Yeah, let's see, what's the next one? Okay. So those are all not choreographed. These are just, I usually go out on Sundays because there are less people around. No one's shouting at me. No one is telling me off for taking pictures of whatever. And same here. It was taken on a Sunday. For me, it is also a big part how I prepare myself to go out. I think it's not only if you can handle your equipment or your approach, it's also how you prepare yourself to go out. I think I always have to set myself in a specific mood somehow. I have to be sure who am I now, who goes out and taking picture in neighborhoods, maybe sometimes pretty dense neighborhoods with where people could actually tell you off or whatever. So I have to choose something between I'm a tourist today, you know, I'm not from here, I'm new to everything you see. I like the colors, I like the shadows, I like the composition. It's more a graphic approach. And this is a way of, you know, not being seen as an aggressive photographer, and it's a way to blend in somehow in the environment and making it easier to take some pictures. This is a series that I started, which is called Paradise Road. It's actually also close to where I live, and it's maybe the closest project that goes with the other projects we've seen now, because it's ongoing still, and it's also taken in an environment that is changing very fast, and actually so fast that I'm already overwhelmed even though I do have access to those streets. And it's exactly, that's the problem, is that people are moving in there so fast. I mean, not in this factory thing, but around that I feel like an invader again. So this blending in technique doesn't work anymore, and I already feel like people are, getting to know me. Oh, now she's here again. Let's close the. She's taking pictures again. Yeah. So this is part of Paradise Road. What's next? It's. Wow, that's just on point. Now I'm giving back the microphone. Maybe we have time later on to answer or ask some questions.
Wait a moment. Because you were really very short. I was very interested in what you're saying. I have to be prepared, and I'm kind of a tourist. Do you think that it's just has something to, when I don't know the places, I look different at places than when I know the places?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of these spaces, let's call them that, I just saw because I was used to a different landscape. In this case, Berlin. So I was actually, when I came back to Switzerland, I think I was looking for something city-ish, even though I moved back to more rural sites. And I also think it's a question of how I call this den Blick waschen. It sounds completely stupid, but I really think it's absolutely important to expose your eyes or your sights in a new way to yourself, so you can be open for something new. And you also have to be sensitive to some stuff, of course, because if I had been living around this nuclear power point, of course I would have blended it out probably. But now, because I was so amazed, how is it possible to give people access? I mean, this is also close to the Paradise Road system, let's call it that. And they also have a factory for armory, for a Waffenfabrik, just next to the power plant. And you think, is this really a good idea? I mean, what the yeah, just this kind of orientation. Yeah, what was the question?
Looking at the place when you're daran gewöhnt bist,
Ja.
als Tourist,
Ja.
neue Dinge oder Orte, die du noch nicht kennst.
Yeah, I think as this tourist personality can help. I think another personality is like pretending you are on a job, but you're not a journalist, because journalists are evil and dangerous. So pretending to do a job and not giving shit about what you are photographing now. So people think, oh no, this poor person has to, she has to carry the weight of being a photographer. No, carrying the weight of the equipment and doing it. So it's just, I think the part of the person, of the personality, of the attitude, of the approach is maybe it's even underrated, and it's very important for a photographer. And I already saw that this kind of development is now being marketed. Actually, you can visit courses to, how to, I don't know, work on your personality to become a better photographer, which is horrible, I think. But yeah, it seems to be a thing.
Okay, so thank you so much. Maybe we come back later to this aspect, what I think is quite interesting. Can I And we continue maybe with Hans Bol. And just maybe, darf ich dich bitten, dich kurz zu fassen?
Well, I always like to go back a little bit to where things come from. And in our case, George and me and Pieter, for me, I have to go back to, let's say, between 1985 and 2000, because that were the years that formed me a little bit, that shaped me a little bit. Yeah, okay. This is a picture that I think George and I both know, maybe not so conscious, but we both know not particularly this person maybe, who's called Art Sinsabau, a very unknown photographer for us, at least in the Netherlands, and I think also in Belgium and also here maybe. But we know this picture, this man walking on the street with this enormous camera on his back. And I know for myself that I surely wanted an experience like that. I wanted to do that just out of curiosity. What does it mean? Is that difficult? Is that possible at all? So in the 80s, I was a teacher of English, and I always had to take the pupils, in fact, to London. It was expected of me to organize a little trip. So we went to London, and about half a day I could send these young kids into the city because that's what they wanted, in fact. And I could go to the Victorian and Albert Museum in London to go to the print room because I had found out that in their collection you could just go through all the cards in there and say, can I see this picture? Can I see that picture? Etc., etc. And so somebody would come and bring me all the original prints, which I had never seen before. And I was interested in large format, and actually I was interested in what you call ultra large format, enormous negatives, cameras. And in the Netherlands that was not available. They thought 6x6 is ultra large format. That's what people in the Netherlands thought, and they never thought about 4 or 5 inch and bigger. So I had this photograph in mind, and I asked for, do you have actual prints by Art Sinsabau? And they had them in their collection. And so I could study, let's say, important photographers like Edward Weston shooting 8x10 or 4/5s, contact prints. What does it mean to make a contact print? Sinsabau did all sorts of experiments, and he went extremely big in terms of negative size. And that was for me an important thing to discover. Here, so and in 1991 and 1992, I traveled in the United States. And in 1991, I went to the Rochester, there's a Kodak, Rochester Institute, yeah. And I went into an exhibition there and I was looking at the photographs, and it took a little while before I realized that I was looking at contact prints. And they were about 45 by 55 centimeters sometimes even. And I had never known that that existed. How can you do that? How does it work? And I found a book in the bookstore, and on the back of the book, I saw that picture on the right-hand side. That was Michael Smith, and there was even a telephone number. So I took it. I went into a telephone booth, no mobile telephones, and I called him up, and he said, "Yeah, hello, this is Michael. Hi, I'm from the Netherlands. Can I come to you?" He said, "Of course you can come, no problem." And so and I said, "Yeah, but maybe at first I make a trip through the US and then come to you." On this trip, I ran by accident, completely by accident, by a man in a wheelchair, and this person had an old camera for sale. And the camera is the camera we used in Antwerp. I saw that camera, which was 12 by 20 inch, 30 by 50 centimeters. That's where our negatives, that's where our print size comes from. It was a 12 by 20 camera in terrible condition. At the end of the trip, I called Michael and asked him about lenses and how that all worked, and he gave me all sorts of advice. And in 1991, 1992, I was having an exhibition in Belgium, and I was hanging the exhibition, and I had to go to my car. I was on the second floor, went down to the downstairs, and by accident again, I ran into George, who was photographing an exhibition in 8x10 inch using an 8x10 camera. First time I ran into an 8x10 user, never seen that before. And so we started to talk, and that's where our connection and our friendship comes from. That started at that very moment. So he came to the exhibition, and from that moment onwards, we have always worked together. So I suggested, why not buy this camera that I saw in 1991? I can call the guy, and maybe he still has the camera, and he had the camera. Can I come and collect the camera because we want to buy it? And we did that, and together we managed to get it going again. New bellows, found lenses to do it, to make it work. And so this is the camera that we used in Antwerp, 12 by 20 inch, 30 by 50 centimeters. Just for the perspective for young people, we had 3 holders. Each side has a sheet of film. So you have 6 images per day. And then you have to go back to a dark room to take out the films and put in a new film. So very, very, it's not easy. It doesn't come easy. And so we started using, Pieter was also, since it was about the 19th century belt around Antwerp, the camera fitted in nicely, in fact. And because it comes from that age, from that period, more or less. So that's how we started to use it. And well, I thought I met this Michael, the guy we just saw in the other picture. Maybe I can go back. Well, you saw him with his cameras, and I found out that his wife was using 4x5 inch, 5x7 inch, and 8x10 inch, and he did 8x10, 8x20, which is a double 8x10, and I think it was 45 by 55, which was the other picture. He was on the top of a mountain photographing this enormous camera. And I can tell you from experience doing this in Antwerp that it's really heavy. I mean, the whole thing with your tripod and the thing, I think was 25 kilos or so. Taking one picture takes about an hour. It's not something you do quickly, so you really have to concentrate. And for those who've never seen that, you photograph by putting it on a tripod, and you see your image, the city in front of you, upwards, upside down, I have to say, upside down, under a dark cloth. So it's not so easy. If you want to make a good shot, and you may have to go a little bit to the left or a little to the right, you know, you take your camera, you have to do it all again because sharpness is gone a little bit. So it's labor intensive, to say the least. And the other thing, of course, is if you photograph nowadays, you use your telephone or something else. But we had to do 6 images per day. You take out your film, you take your film home, which in my case is in the Netherlands. The camera was always at Pieter's home in Antwerp. You take your negatives home and you develop your negatives in the darkroom. And if you make a mistake, it was all for nothing. You have to do it again. And it's not so easy to develop these negatives because they're this big. So in order to get them well developed, well exposed, everything has to work together to get a good negative and then to make the print. Of course, now we have all these images have been digitized. George has a fantastic camera to do that. So we can make enormous prints if we want to. Okay, I have to be fast. This picture has been published in Antwerp, I think. The 2 of us standing with the camera. 2 lenses, maybe a good thing to mention. We had to find the lenses. If you have a big negative like that, you have to have a lens that covers the negative. Otherwise, you get rounded corners, of course. It doesn't work. So we had to find the correct lenses. And we only had 2 lenses. And I was thinking about that last night, how simple the whole procedure was, because the lenses were a 480, which was a slight wide angle on this camera, and a 600. And we used these 2 lenses, let's say a 35 millimeter camera and 50. That's all. So, and that made it also, in a way, easy and consistent. So all these photographs, I think if we look back at them, they're very quiet photographs. Well thought out observations, because you work under the dark cloth, because you have to judge the image upside down, of course, but it goes slow. So you take your time, and it makes that the image, I think, in comparison to what we do nowadays, your telephone making 100 pictures in 5 minutes, that was one in 1 hour. That's the difference. So a negative like that is big. You see my hand so that you have a little bit of an idea how big a negative is. Then, of course, the special quality of a contact print, also gone nowadays. Of course, in the Netherlands, I don't know about Switzerland, but in the Netherlands, there's an enormous interest, again, in analog photography. There's even just recently, young people organize a contact print exhibition. So you see people that have contact prints like that. And I was the one who had a contact print like that because I use bigger cameras. And I was thinking about Michael Smith, who died by now. He and many others, they just had a different thought about the whole thing. They said, if you want a bigger print, you just have to have a bigger camera, which is completely different. I had lots of discussions, and also George had lots of discussions with him. And I said, well, we come from an enlarging culture. We take a small negative and we enlarge to a certain size. And in his eyes, that was complete stupidity. You know, if you want a detailed picture, really sharp, then you make a contact print. And if you want it bigger, you take a bigger camera, which nowadays is unimaginable, more or less. Anyway, this is a 12 by 20, so 30 by 50 centimeter dimension. And I think because we use that camera, if you compare that to a 4 by 5 dimension, which is easy in Photoshop, I did 4, 5, and 8 by 10 a lot in my life. And most of the time, my conclusion was in the lower parts of the image, nothing much is happening. And in the higher parts of the image, nothing much is happening. Sky and foreground, but not so interesting. The more interesting part is actually from left to right or from right to left. That's why I thought, in retrospect, why these images work so well in a city. Because we look like that, more or less. This is how we perceive the world. Not like that. It's like that. So the camera fits in. Really wonderful. Really wonderful. Pieter already showed this exhibition we had in 1993 in Antwerp. I was doing that at the time with an 8 by 10, I remember. This is my 8 by 20. I copied that idea of the 8 by 20, which 12 by 20 is this high, 8 by 20 is this high. So you get more of a horizontal. You have to think about the horizontal connections in a photograph. Not so easy. Most of the time, my experience is that free part of the picture is interesting, and the last part is much less difficult. If it's happening here, it's not happening there. It's very difficult to make a picture that is interesting over the entire width of the photograph. That Städtebau is, you never hear about him, but I have 2 books of about his work, and I like that. This is a more modern one. The other one is this one, and I bought this one first. And I think it's interesting because he was doing 8 by 10, but in his, I've never known him, but I think in his life he went to more, this I will do later, he went from this type of thing. He went to very, let's say 50 wide, 10 centimeters high, or even less. So he went from the 8 by 10 to this, to this, to this. And I think that's interesting, also in cities. These are 2 photographs. When we were exhibiting in Antwerp, we had a similar occasion like this evening with people from the Netherlands and from Belgium who spoke about these photographs. And in the case, somebody from the Netherlands called Frits Giersberg, he used to be the curator of the Netherlands Photo Museum in Rotterdam. We invited him to talk about, or maybe talk about or write about his experiences with these photographs. And he took out these 2 photographs and he wrote about the situation in 1993 on the left side, the situation about on the right-hand side, which is 2023. And he took the left photo, I think, to look at the picture from a perspective of 2053. So he sort of liked to think about how things had happened or changed again. Who knows, 2053, what will happen? Not us, of course, we'll look at the city, but our idea is that it would be interesting to do it again, because in that way you create something like a history, which would be good, I think. I believe in that. That's why I photograph with these big cameras, or used to do it anyway, because I like the idea of a tradition. Two images by George, exactly. Ulrich, he had many pictures in which he exactly had the same perspective. In this case, we were standing there and we were trying to find out where did we stand exactly in 1993. And here, you see this piece of stone here is exactly that. That was the only way we could find back why did we stand in 2023. I was thinking the other series we saw about Sweden, something important that happened in our experience. We went from film and this big camera to digital. And that's completely different, because which lenses, if we used a 480 and a 600, which ones do we need to make to get exactly the same perspective? That was not so easy to find out. And we decided to do it in digital, because film is very difficult to get, if not impossible, and very, very expensive nowadays. I still have films in that size. I think it's worth about 10,000 euros nowadays. The same, just waiting to be used again, maybe, who knows. As you can see, in Antwerp, when we had a similar discussion, we invited a photographer from Belgium called Mark Steculorum. He's a friend of ours, in fact, and he had a good idea. He quoted, maybe you have heard of Gary Badger. Gary Badger is an Englishman who worked together with Martin Parr, and they wrote a book about photography. And he photographs himself, but he also criticizes and writes. He's like a journalist. And what the distinction he made is, you have photographers who've tried to give interesting images by doing all sorts of wrong things, going low with your camera, extreme wide angles, make it as interesting as possible. But he is much more in favor of our approach, which he called, in his quote, quiet photography. It's photographs of nothing special, in fact, but it's the concentration that is, and looking for that particular sort of non-photograph that makes it interesting. And that's the point that Gary Badger made, and Mark, our friend in Antwerp, quoted. And I thought it was a very good quote. And it all goes back to somebody called Louis Boltz, also somebody who belonged to the New Topographics in 1975. Also somebody who makes very quiet photographs. There's nothing special, there's nothing spectacular about it. It's just a quiet observation. Nothing more than that, in fact. But it seems easy, but it is not. As you can see, you were saying trees have gone. In Antwerp, you see the opposite movement. Top is 1993, the lower one is 2023. More trees everywhere. Here they took away a complete building. The building on the left was taken away, I think. Anyway, sometimes very difficult to find back. If they change the city a lot, it's very difficult to find your exact spot back. I don't know how you did it, by the way. Crossing the streets or something crosses on the street or something? Christian did it. Huh? Nails. Ah, that's a good idea. Same lens, yeah. These are photographs made in 2023, and we hope Antwerp changes also very much. All of us liked Antwerp in 1993. It was much like a workers' city, maybe something similar to this area where we're here. Factories everywhere. And now it's many yuppies and people with more money come into the city, and it's getting very, very expensive now. But you can still find these strange spots, because you were mentioning, how do you select in a city? The options are endless, in fact. How do you do it? I don't know. I just drive around. I use the car, always. I tried the 2023 variant by bicycle. Not possible, because Antwerp is is full with these stones. It's not possible. Yeah. No, but I like to drive around, and I do that in the United States a lot, and same here. I do it by car. Okay, that was the last one, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your interesting experiences. I think it was very optimistic, my program for this Blue Monday. I think we should do like a whole day workshop, but I think it's fair enough also to show, to let him speak, to show his pictures. And maybe I have some questions that I would have discussed, but maybe I let you the Vortritt. If you have questions, then you'll be the first to ask questions. Or maybe someone has right now a question. Ulrich.
I'd just like to add to your comments about these large cameras. I made it up to 8 by 10, not larger, because that's difficult enough. But I think is the most important aspect, and what is really, and I can see in your photographs, it's not about the sharpness, it's more about the tonality. I think the tonality is just amazing. And you can see in these photographs, if you compare to the new digital ones, it's a world apart. The digital ones are so different. It's flat compared with your photographs, where there's more depth, sense of depth. And I still like this. Okay.
Is already much better
than the small ones. But
8 by 12 by 20 inch is so big. George is the one who knows that best.
Thank you. And it took how many seconds? I mean, you were. Yep, exposure.
Sometimes 5 seconds or so. So
okay.
The camera. Oh yeah. Sometimes the exposure times, because also something maybe to mention, just a small detail. But if you have a camera like that, I've been on rooftops, for example, and what you then forget is that there's wind always, and the camera is not very sturdy, so it moves in the wind, it trembles. So if you have to make an exposure, you do your exposure metering and you find out that you have to expose for 5 seconds, for example, that's a big problem, because if the camera shakes, the sharpness that you're trying to get with all these big negatives is gone. So yeah, that's a big problem. And also maybe maybe a funny detail is that we used these 2 lenses in Ilex shutters. You have a shutter behind your lens, and the shutters were Ilex shutters from the United States, and they were very bad shutters. So sometimes you would stand there finally with your camera on a rooftop, and you were ready to use your, to click, and then the shutter wouldn't work. So you were listening and you thought, I didn't open, I think. So the only way you could find out is in the darkroom and develop the film, and then nothing on the film. That's how it went sometimes.
Thank you. So, Christian, I mean, you also have a very great turnaround.
I will hurry up.
Thank you.
Yes, I went for my English is not the best, and my free speeching too, so I will go through the picture and reading from the paper in German. Not in Swiss German, but German. And to the English-speaking people, I will send them the translation by Google. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, ich darf heute Abend bzw. in den nächsten 5 bis 8 Minuten über mein Interesse und die Art und Weise, wie ich auf urbanisierte Landschaften schaue, zu Ihnen sprechen. Ich bin Fotograf und nicht fotografierender Architekt. Ich sage das Ihnen deshalb, nicht weil ich stolz bin auf den zweiten Wortteil meines Berufstitels, sondern weil ich mich zuallererst für Fotografie interessierte und interessiere. Aufgewachsen in den 70er und 80er Jahren am Ortsrand von Uster, wurde ich durch meinen Vater und meinen Lehrer geprägt in der Kritik an den starken Landschaftsveränderungen, der Umweltverschmutzung, des Walfangs und des Waldsterbens. Fotografie bat mir die Möglichkeit, einerseits mich in der Landschaft, der Agrarlandschaft um Uster aufzuhalten und in ihr klassische Sehnsuchtsbilder zu finden bzw. herzustellen. Andererseits fotografierte ich in Uster Häuser, die vor dem Abbruch standen, benützte Fotografie also auch mit ihrer Kernkompetenz des Bewahrens und Erinnerns. Aber die Stadt Uster, die sechsspurige Zürcher Straße, die Einkaufszentren und weitere städtische Orte fotografierte ich nur ein einziges Mal. Leider. Ich fotografierte Musikkonzerte im Freundeskreis und Stadt, nur auf Besuch in Paris, einer richtigen Stadt, einer Großstadt, einer schönen, fotogenen Stadt. Uster war keine Stadt. Man sagte, man gönnt ins Dorf, wir gehen in die Stadt, bedeutete, nach Zürich zu fahren. Ende 80er, Anfangs 90er Jahre fotografierte ich auch einige Reportagen. Einen Sommer auf der Mastrilser Alp, die glatt vom Greifensee zum Rhein, Bahnhöfe ohne Züge im Zürcher Oberland. Wichtiger aber für die heutige Diskussion sind aber Fotografien, die einige Jahre später, gegen Ende meiner Ausbildung an der Fotoklasse der Schule für Gestaltung in Zürich entstanden sind. Im multimedialen Projekt mit dem Titel Swiss Desire, Swiss Disaster fotografierte ich unter anderem klassische Ortsansichten in Stadl bei Bülach. Mit einer Großformatkamera und Stativ bewegte ich mich langsam durch den Ort und dokumentierte mir charakteristisch scheinende Situationen. Begleitet durch Ulrich Görlich, einer meiner damaligen Lehrer an der Fotoklasse, fotografierte ich dokumentarisch oder, wie Walker Evans sagte, im dokumentarischen Stil. Die Kamera auf Augenhöhe, die Kamera gerade ausgerichtet, Horizontverschiebungen nach unten, durch Shiften gibt weniger Boden, ein leichtes Weitwinkel, große Schärfentiefe, keine Personen, was nicht schwierig war, es hatte keine Beachten von Dach- und Fassadenlinien, Gebäude trennen, dass sie sich nicht überschneiden. Und das Objekt ist wichtiger als eine künstlerische Originalität, Zitat Susanne Holzbach. Kurz danach ging ich nach Marseille in ein Austauschsemester und dachte, dass ich dort diese dokumentarische Art der Fotografie weiter betreiben könne. Aber die Großstadt Marseille war nicht das Dorf Stadl. Überall fahrende und parkierte Autos, überall Menschen und Passanten. Mir stand auch keine Großformatkamera zur Verfügung. Ich musste mich mit meiner Reportagekamera in Mittelformat begnügen. Anfänglich wollte ich eine Haushaltsleiter kaufen, damit ich über die parkierten Autos einen besseren Blick auf die Bauten dahinter hätte. Dieses Ansinnen verwarf ich aber schnell aus praktischen Gründen, da ich mich sowie Passanten über die Leiter stolpern sah, aber wichtiger, aus formalen und inhaltlichen Gründen. Die Autos, oft parkiert auf dem Trottoir, gehörten zur Stadt wie die Passanten, die Kandelaber, die Lichtsignalanlagen, die Tafeln, die Hunde und viele Dinge mehr. Zurück in der Schweiz durfte ich für die Ausstellung Die Schweizer Autobahn im Museum für Gestaltung in Zürich eine Serie von Tankstellen, Garagen und Gasthöfen entlang der Kantonstraße von Winterthur nach St. Gallen fotografieren. Auch bei dieser Arbeit wollte ich zuerst mit einer Großformatkamera arbeiten, was aber aus Zeit- und Budgetgründen nicht möglich war. So fotografierte ich mit Kleinbild und Stativ sowie einem Shift-Objektiv, um im Bild die großen Straßenflächen zugunsten von mehr Himmelfläche zu reduzieren. Aber im Gespräch mit Ulrich Görlich kamen wir zum Schluss, dass genau diese Straßenflächen im Vordergrund die wirtschaftliche Wichtigkeit der Kantonsstraße vor dem Bau der Autobahn betont. Hier rechts im Bild zu sehen, links die Kantonsstraße, rechts die Autobahn, links das Restaurant Wiesenthal zwischen Gossau und St. Gallen. Die nächsten 10 Jahre fotografierte ich hauptsächlich Wald, der kein Wald sein durfte, weil er in der Bauzone wuchs. Wald, der nicht Wald genannt wird, weil er Autobahnbegleitgrün heißt. Dörfer, die aussehen wie Dörfer, aber nicht zum Wohnen gebaut wurden. Schale, Ställe, Scheune, deren Funktion nichts mit ihrem Bild zu tun haben. Ruhige, schöne Landschaften in Bosnien, die bei einem falschen Schritt tödlich sein können. Auch diese Werkserien fotografierte ich im dokumentarischen Stil. Zitat Thomas Wesky: Fotografie im dokumentarischen Stil zielen auf eine subjektive Sicht im Ausdruck des Dokumentarischen. In dieser soll eine Balance herrschen zwischen der Form und dem Inhalt. Diese Ausgewogenheit eröffnet dem Betrachter die Möglichkeit, rationelles Erarbeiten des Inhalts durch Vergnügen am Sehen auszulösen. Sehr schön. Erst ab 2008 fotografierte ich wieder in der Stadt, oft in eine Himmelsrichtung, zu einem vorher festgelegten Ort oder entlang einer Diagonale und wenn möglich mit passanten Menschen. Um mit einer Kleinbildkamera aus der Hand im Fluss der Stadt, eines Streuners oder schöner, eines Flaneurs mit festem Ziel. In Skopje, Tuzla, hier Tuzla, und weiteren Städten im Raum von Ex-Jugoslawien sowie 2011 in Winterthur und 2018, hier Winterthur, 2018 in Orlova auf Einladung des Instituts Urban Landscape. Zeitgleich, das Bild haben wir auch schon gesehen, zeitgleich durfte ich für Meret Wanderler und Ulrich Görlich für das fotografische Langzeitprojekt in Schlieren das Wiederfotografieren übernehmen. Die Vorgabe, Fotografieren ohne Passanten und Autos, wurde von Jahr zu Jahr schwieriger einzuhalten, da immer mehr Menschen und Autos sich im Stadtraum Schlieren bewegten. Einen möglichen weiteren Durchgang im Jahr 2021 mit derselben Vorgabe hätte ich aus gesundheitlichen Gründen ablehnen müssen. Zu viel Stress. Aber dieses strikte Verbot, keine Passanten, keine Autos, welche zugegebenermaßen den Blick des Betrachters, der Betrachterin vom wahren fotografischen Objekt der gebauten Stadt ablenken, ein solches Verbot hätte es mir oft einfacher gemacht bei der Entscheidung der Gestaltung einer Fotografie im Stadtraum. Ist der Passant, die Passantin zu nahe bei der Kamera? Ist der Mantel oder die Einkaufstasche zu dominant? Ist das Auto zu alt, zu neu, die Farbe zu ausgefallen? Sind Lieferwagen jetzt halt mal meistens weiß und dadurch bilddominant oder warte ich auf einen dunkleren? Ist der Rennvelofahrer zu speziell, weil nur einer pro Tag vorbeifährt? Hat es zu viele oder zu wenige Autos, Velofahrerinnen, E-Mofa-Fahrer, Kinderwagen, alte und junge, modische und weniger modische, hellere und dunklere Menschen? Ist die Situation, die Verteilung der Menschen und Fahrzeuge repräsentativ oder überhöht? Beginnen die Objekte, die Dinge im Bild miteinander zu kommunizieren, eine Geschichte zu erzählen? Wirken sie sogar arrangiert? Ich hätte nie gedacht, dass diese Frage, die nicht nur von formaler, sondern auch inhaltlicher Natur sind, mich seit bald 40 Jahren Fotografie von urbanisierten Landschaft auf Trab hält. Immer wieder, anders und zum Glück nicht abschließend beantwortbar. Die letzte Bildserie zeigt Varianten von 3 verschiedenen Standpunkten der fotografischen Langzeitbeobachtung Grütze Plus von 2025 bis 2035, die ich zusammen mit dem Auftraggeber Martin Joos Leiter Tiefbau der Stadt Winterthur entwickeln durfte. Die Endauswahl eines fotografischen Durchgangs bestreiten wir jeweils im gemeinsamen Gespräch, weil ich die obige Fragen als bildrelevant betrachte und weil sich diese fotografische Arbeit, meine erste Auftragsarbeit in diesem Stil, durch ihre strikte Untersuchungsanlage einen offizielleren, repräsentativeren Charakter als meine frei gewählten eigenen Arbeiten haben. Aber ich glaube, dass es uns trotzdem gelingt, immer wieder einen Moment der Poesie der Dinge des profanen Alltags in meinen Bildern zu bewahren. Oder so wie es Thomas Wesky sagte, im Gegensatz zur Reportagefotografie, die aus dem Nebeneinander visueller Superlative besteht, wird hier eine Dramaturgie des Alltäglichen entwickelt, die auch das scheinbar Nebensächliche zulässt und diesem Bedeutung zugesteht. Dies wiederum ermöglicht dem Betrachter, der Betrachterin eine individuelle Deutung der Objekte im Bild. Einer gegenüber dem Fotografen gleichberechtigten Position in der Wahrnehmung der oder einer Wirklichkeit. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank für alle eure Ausführungen. Also was ich gelernt habe, wenn ihr Fotografen einladet, ihr dürft sie keine Bilder mitbringen lassen. Weil es waren dann doch mehr als 8 Minuten.
Waren es mehr als 8 Minuten?
Ja, ich habe es gestoppt.
Ich habe es auch gespottet, aber nicht jetzt.
Nein, ich schaue auf die Zeit. Ich sehe, es ist gegen 8 Uhr. Wir haben zwar sehr viel gehört, die Stühle haben wir nicht gebraucht. Und ich glaube, ehrlich gesagt, jetzt nach knapp 2 Stunden geht es wahrscheinlich zu weit, wenn wir uns noch über so viele Fragen, weil ich würde dann gar nicht wissen wollen, welche Frage soll ich, wenn ich nur eine darf, welche soll ich dann stellen? Aber vielleicht schreibe ich euch Mails, um gewisse Dinge, die mich tatsächlich interessieren, von euren Arbeiten doch noch wissen kann. Ich schaue ins Publikum und wenn ihr eine ganz dringende Frage habt, die man relativ kurz beantworten könnte, dann bitte ich euch, das jetzt noch zu machen. Aber ich danke euch allen für diese höchst aufschlussreichen Arbeitsserien, oder, die sich an einen Ort während 20 Jahren kümmert, über Dinge, die etwas über die, wie gehe ich überhaupt in die Welt hinaus, finde ich interessant, bis hin zu all diesen technischen Fragen, die ich mir tatsächlich so natürlich als Nicht-Fotografin überhaupt nicht bewusst bin, oder wie entscheidend es ist, mit welchem Equipment, und auch deine Erläuterung, die auch eine biografische Entwicklung darstellen, möchte ich mich bei allen ganz herzlich bedanken.